Now, I want to start this video by asking you a question. What makes a good piece of media? Now, most likely, every single one of you would have had a different answer. Perhaps you prefer a specific genre, maybe you like certain character types, or maybe you like your media to be light and non-serious. However, for me, the best pieces of media have a profound impact on me as a person. One example is that one of my favorite films of all time is Soul. And now you may find that weird as it is technically a kid's film, but I remember the first time I watched it, I wasn't thinking about the film, I was thinking about myself and my life. That film has continued to impact my life and the way I live and behave to this day. And the same goes for the types of albums that I love. The ones that have stuck with me the most are the ones that make me rethink my entire life perspective. Albums like To Pimp a Butterfly and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy rank so highly for me as they've made me realize things about myself that I didn't even realize before listening to them. However, none have had quite the effect that For Your Eyes Only by J.Cole has had on me. The person I was before I listened to that album is not the same person I am today. So it's no surprise that I believe that this is J. Cole's greatest album by far. Don't get me wrong, I love pretty much all of Cole's projects. He's my favorite artist, but I don't believe albums such as 2014 Forest Hill Drives or The Off-Season come anywhere near For Your Eyes Only. The album tells the story of a man called James McMillan Jr., a friend of J. Cole who was murdered at 22 years old. The album is directed to his daughter and is meant for her eyes only, hence the album title. However, the album also has extremely deep meanings for us as the regular listener. Now, what message you take from the album may vary, but for me, it highlighted the fragility of life. It showed me that your life can be cut short on any day and tomorrow that is not promised. So while we're alive, we should live our life to the fullest and never leave a stone unturned. So in this video, I want to go through each song and show you the story of the album and the impact it had on me personally. The album starts with the song For Whom the Bell Tolls, and in my opinion, this sets the tone of the album perfectly. This song is from the perspective of Cole himself, as he tells the listener that he simply is not happy in his life. He does this with lyrics such as, I'm searching and praying and hoping for something, I know I'm gonna see it, I know that it's coming. Cole wants to be happy, but he simply can't. Something he has experienced is keeping him in a depression. However, he doesn't quite tell the listener what it is yet. Perhaps he isn't ready to share with us at the moment as it's deeply traumatic for him. Instead, he's turned to Christ and religion to help with his issues. What I also really love is the stark contrast between this intro and the intro on Cole's previous album, 2014 Forest Hills Drive. In that one, Cole repeatedly asks the question, do you want to be happy? Therefore, making For Whom the Bell Tolls the complete opposite shows the listener that this album is not like anything Cole has created before. It's significantly darker and grittier in its nature. Also, this intro shows the daughter of James how her father's death impacted Cole himself. This lets her know that she is not alone in her grief. Cole then says, bells getting loud, ain't nowhere to hide, got nowhere to go, put away my pride. Cole gives us a slight look at what is making him so sad here. Church bells often play at a funeral, hinting that this trauma he's dealing with is grief. When he says there's nowhere to go or hide, this perhaps shows he's tried many things to distract himself. However, none have worked, so he's chosen to make this album to confront it head on. He's done using escape tools and wants to confront his grief to deal with it as quickly as possible. Overall, this song perfectly sets the gloomy tone of the album whilst keeping the audience intrigued. The next song on the album is Immortal. This is the first song where Cole raps from the perspective of James himself. The first verse shows how James doesn't like the life he lives. If he could redo his life, he'd change it, but perhaps he's in too deep at this point. We see this with lyrics such as, numb the pain cause it's hard for a felon, in my mind, I be crying, know it's wrong, but I'm selling. Here we get a sneak peek at James's life and we see that he is a drug dealer. However, he doesn't want to do this, but perhaps because of his poor upbringing and rough financial situation, he's been forced to sell drugs. What I find interesting as well is the fact that he says he's been crying in his mind. He's not actually crying, he's just thinking about doing it. Perhaps he's had a very toxic male role model in his life who's taught him that crying as a man is weak. Now, as a white person, I'm definitely not the best person to say this, but I think that this is quite common amongst black people. Now, my only reference for this is comments that I got on my video about Count Me Out by Kendrick Lamar. But from what I read in those comments, there's still a long way to go for black people going to therapy and talking about those issues. However, that may not be correct, so please take what I say with a pinch of salt there. However, if this is true, I am genuinely interested in finding out why, so if it is, please leave me a comment and tell me why. Anyway, the second verse shows a very angry version of James. He talks about how black people have constantly been denied opportunities in society. He does this with lyrics such as, "Have you ever seen a black man on the moon? Have you ever seen your brother go to prison as you cry?" Now again, take what I say here with a huge pinch of salt, as it's coming from a white person looking in, but I believe that James is sort of deflecting responsibility for how his life panned out. Well, yes, black people are denied opportunities in society. There's evidence of that happening in the past, and it will probably happen in the future. However, does this mean that James is forced to sell drugs? Many people have had similar upbringings to James, yet have not turned to that lifestyle. One example is Cole himself. Cole and James were childhood friends, and Cole became a successful rapper, whereas James turned to drugs. However, perhaps James felt that this was his only life goal. Being surrounded by this lifestyle, he felt that there was nothing else for him. However, I believe that this shows James's immaturity. He only died at 22, so he wasn't able to mature and grow and learn from his experiences. Perhaps if he was able to age and learn from his experience, he would have realized that there was more for him in another life. I remember the first time I listened to this song, I was actually pretty scared. It paints quite a horrifying picture of that lifestyle and how deadly it can be for a person. I think Cole actually wanted to do this to prevent any listeners with a similar upbringing from turning to selling drugs. He knows the first-hand devastation it can cause, so he wants to almost scare people away from it. Cole continues to rap from the perspective of James on the next song, which is Deja Vu. In this song, James has a conversation with a woman about the types of men that she likes. He believes that he is better than her type and that she should be with him. This song gives James some much needed humanity for the listener. Cole raps, "Although I know your man and trust me he would die for you, these quiet thoughts of you been going on for years now." Up to this point, all that the listener knows about James is that he was a drug dealer. However, now we realize that he was actually a very good guy. Despite really liking this girl, he respects that she's in a relationship with one of his close friends, and he doesn't want to do anything about that. He's not going to force her away from her or try and get her to cheat on him. I think this shows listeners how victims of gun crimes aren't just statistics, they are real people with real stories. A really tragic line comes in the pre-chorus when Cole repeats, "She fought with small town people, I got bigger dreams." The second part of that line again shows the humanity of James. He had bigger dreams, he wanted to make more of his life, but he was stuck selling drugs. Songs like Deja Vu make us actually care about James. It makes us realize that he's not just some drug dealer who's ruthless and would kill. He's a nice guy who cares for his friends. I remember the first time I listened to the album, I had to pause it after this song. It made me think of every news article you read of someone's death. No matter what their characteristics are or what their background is, they are real people. They have their own story, life, and experiences. This song had a weird effect on me as well, as it made me feel that my life was both important and insignificant. I felt important as this song showed me how fragile my life is. No matter what happens or I want to happen, my life could end tomorrow, and that death could really impact a lot of people. Therefore, I realized that I should make the most out of my life. 15-year-old me felt like he was wasting his life just sat playing Xbox, because if I died the next day, I would not be happy with how my life turned out. On the other hand, I also felt quite insignificant after listening to Deja Vu, as I realized to many others, the most I'll ever be is a statistic. Therefore, this song highlighted to me that the only thing that really matters is what the people I care about think about me. It doesn't matter what the wider world thinks, all that matters is what the close ones in my life think about me. When I listened to this song, I was a typical, annoying, slightly arrogant 15-year-old. However, this song really impacted my ego, and I mean that in a good way. You realize that you're not all important. You realize that you're not the most important person in the world. Every single person is on the same level as you because they are all humans. Anyway, after I stopped having an existential suffering and clicked play, the next song was Ville Mentality. Now, Cole described this phrase as the feeling that opportunities aren't available in his small town of Fayetteville. Now, what I actually find interesting is that this is the opposite to what James felt. In Deja Vu, James said that he had bigger dreams. He wanted to do more with his life. And perhaps he felt like this was possible in Fayetteville. However, in contrast, Cole doesn't think that he can achieve much there. And in a way, Cole was right. He moved to New York and made it as a famous rapper, whereas James didn't. Cole knew how dangerous his area was, which he raps about in the chorus where he says, "How long can I survive with this mentality?" In contrast, James naively thought that he would achieve a lot despite being a drug dealer in a dangerous town. This again could show the immaturity that James perhaps had as he was still very young. This song taught me to maintain realism in my life and my dreams. It's good to have dreams and want to achieve them, but you've got to try and find realistic ways to achieve them. For example, I myself am from a small town. Don't get me wrong, it's not dangerous like Cole raps about, but there aren't many things going on. So therefore, I know that if I want the best opportunities, moving to a city may be best. After Ville Mentality comes She's Mine Part 1. Now, I'm going to speak about She's Mine Part 1 and Part 2 at the same time, as the notes that I have are similar for both songs. Part 1 speaks from James's point of view and features him speaking about being in love with his partner. On the other hand, Part 2 shows him talking about the love he has for his daughter. What I find interesting is how both songs follow the exact same structure. Both songs have identical choruses, showing that the feeling James had at both times was similar. He's only experienced true unconditional love twice, once with his partner and the other with his daughter. These songs again provide more humanity to James, making the listener feel more sympathy when the album decides to tackle his eventual death. I think the placement of She's Mine Part 2 is very interesting as well. Cole put the song which talks about the happiest moment in his life right before the song which talks about his death. These two juxtaposing events make the highs and lows seem so much larger. This again creates more sympathy amongst listeners. To go from the extreme high of having a daughter and becoming a parent to your life ending makes it feel so much more impactful. These two songs perfectly encapsulate the feeling of true love for me. The high-pitched vocals and soft piano make the feeling seem almost heavenly. After She's Mine comes what I believe to be J.Cole's best song, which is Change. This song is a lot more upbeat than the previous songs, as Cole talks about how it's possible to break the cycle of violence within black communities. I think this part of the album changes in its approach, as Cole is now trying to teach lessons to the listener, but more specifically, James's daughter. He's seen firsthand how the devastation that her father's choice of life can cause, so he doesn't want her or anyone else to go down that path. And there's many ways that he can deter someone from this life. He's tried scaring them earlier in the album, but now he's trying to teach. The lyrics that stuck with me the most come from the chorus when Cole says, "I know you desperate for the change, let the pen glide, but the only real change come from inside." Many people try to change their life, but with external sources. People may get a new job, take up new hobbies, or maybe even turn to substances. While they may think that they've changed, they're still the same person with the same issues that haven't been addressed. What I also like is the correlation between this lyric and For Whom the Bell Tolls. In that song, Cole said that he was praying to try and deal with those issues instead of facing them head on. However, now he's saying that you need to actually change from within and tackle the issues head on. Therefore, this advice probably comes from his experiences. He knows that trying to distract yourself with external sources just doesn't work. Eventually, your issues will come back up, and they'll come up a lot worse. A really tragic thing about this is that Cole was only able to learn from his experiences and getting older, and this was not available to James as he died young. If James wasn't murdered, perhaps he could have learned from his experiences and bettered his life. This makes his death just that little bit more tragic. The chorus and the entirety of Change was a real wake-up call for me. It showed me that if I really wanted to improve myself, I'd have to have difficult conversations with myself and deal with any issues that I have. I've mentioned before that I've done therapy, and this song, as well as Count Me Out by Kendrick Lamar, like I've said, sort of pushed me towards it. Obviously not entirely, but they definitely had a huge impact on me. Seeing these two people that I sort of idolize speak very maturely about such issues made me realize that it probably is best. Just like my Count Me Out video, I will put any links to some mental health services in the description if you yourself are struggling with those issues. Now, obviously, my situation is very different to Cole's and James, as I'm not trying to break the cycle of generational black trauma. But that is another thing that I like about this song and the entire album. Despite it being about such a specific situation that not many listeners could relate to, the lessons taught throughout the album can influence anyone greatly. Anyway, after Change comes Neighbors, which, side note, I believe to be Cole's most overrated song. Anyway, the song talks about a real incident which occurred when a studio that Cole rented was raided by SWAT after the neighbors thought it was used for selling drugs. Now, I love the fact that Cole placed this song right after Change. On Change, Cole talks about how he's trying to break free of black trauma and better his life. Cole told us that he's not a dangerous drug dealer, he is just a normal person who's actually a good guy. However, right after On Neighbors, we see that Cole is still viewed as a bad person, perhaps simply because he is black. Despite doing all these good things and being a good person, simply his appearance is enough for people to get scared. My favorite part of Neighbors is the ending of the first verse. Cole talks about how the studio is a safe haven before it's cut short with the line, "Wait, I think police is at my door." It shows how quickly this event took place. One moment he's doing what he loves with his friends, the next he has guns pointed at him. I think that there are some real similarities between this event and the death of James. Both events happened quickly and turned Cole's world completely upside down. This to me shows that despite Cole and James living very different lives, they still have some similarities. And perhaps the major one is the way that society views them. And perhaps the only reason that Cole was let off and not arrested is because he's famous. That then raises the question of what if this event happens to someone who doesn't have Cole's money and isn't as famous? And sadly, we've seen events like that happen all over the place, especially in America, and the ending is never good. This song is an eye-opener to everyone. Now, my perspective obviously comes from a white listener, and this song made me realize truly how dangerous it is as a black person, especially in America. Obviously, we've heard so many events of black people being mistreated, especially by law enforcement. However, hearing this story come from someone so famous and well-respected as Cole makes you genuinely fear for everyone else. Anyway, after Neighbors, we get Folding Clothes. Now, I always believed that this song was from the perspective of James. However, Genius says that this is from Cole's perspective, talking to his pregnant wife. Now, while that does make sense, I believe that Cole is personally again speaking from James's perspective. And the reason for this is to give him more humanity. Cole is building up to the album's finale with this song and the next one, which is She's Mine Part 2. And in order to make the eventual death more impactful, the listener has to actually care for James and his family. And Cole does this expertly by talking about something so benign like folding clothes. This makes James a more relatable person, as we've all done this. Most men listening have probably done the washing to help their partners in their life. While the rest of this song is not really relatable, this song certainly is. This makes the listener realize that what happened to James can truly happen to anyone. Also, this song is meant for James's daughter, and why would a song about Cole's love for his wife be intended for her? Instead, I think that this song is supposed to show James's daughter how good of a man her dad was. This song shows James's daughter that her dad was a nice man who looked after her mother. The finale of the album is the title track, For Your Eyes Only. Now, I am going to make a separate video about this song in its entirety, as there's so much to say about it. The song summarizes James's life all the way until his eventual death. However, the most important part of the song for me is the ending. Cole says that James wasn't a real man because of his criminal life, but actually because of his deep love for his daughter. This highlighted to me how one person can be viewed differently by everyone. James could either be seen as a criminal or a loving father, both equally true. However, this song ultimately shows us that it's not about what we do, it's about the bonds we create in our life. No one cares about money when you're on your deathbed, you only want your loved ones. And it's simply because they are the most important things in your life. This song taught me to value the relationships and spend every day trying to better and strengthen them, because if you don't, you're going to regret it when you're not able to do so. This moment also had me thinking deeply about what I personally want my legacy to be. Obviously, I know I'm still very young and I still have a lot of living to do, but I remember thinking that if I died tomorrow, how would I be remembered? And that is still something that I think about to this day. Don't get me wrong, I know that I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Some people won't like me, and that's okay. But the important thing is how the ones who I love view me. Now, I quickly want to talk about one criticism that people have of the album. Some say that the album is messy, and it's only brought together by the final song.
A lot of the songs before the closer here read more like vignettes, and the title track is kind of like an epilogue that explains why all of these songs sort of make sense on the same album.
Now this to me has never made sense. That final line of For Your Eyes Only is only impactful because of what we've heard. We've seen how James struggled to get out of the drug trade and how he was also a deeply loving person, and we've also seen how his life could have gone if he followed the same path as Cole. You cannot have tragedy without love, and this album perfectly does that. The whole album is spent making us learn and care about James. It teaches the listener and James's daughter who James was, and it all builds up to a deeply traumatic event. For Your Eyes Only is genuinely one of the most life-changing albums I think has ever been created. No matter who you are, this album can teach you things about yourself that you never knew before listening. It's a genuine eye-opener, and it's had a huge positive impact on me and probably a lot of you watching this video right now. If you haven't listened to For Your Eyes Only, please go and listen to it, as it can genuinely change your life.